There's a little-known part of Hollywood that most people are not aware of, known as the Audience Test Preview. The recently released book, Audienceology, reveals this for the first time. Our podcast series, Don't Kill the Messenger, brings this book to life, taking a peek behind the curtain. And now, join author and entertainment research expert, Kevin Goetz.
Real character actors are chameleons and completely change from role to role. I mean, they disappear and transform. My guest today is indeed a master of transformation, but not just as an actor. Colleen Camp, who has enjoyed a 6-decade career in front of the camera, has also had a 5-decade career as a movie producer, seamlessly switching between the spotlight and the producer's chair. As an actor, Colleen has graced screens in over 150 roles, including such diverse films as Clue, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Wayne's World, and American Hustle. As a producer, she's helped to orchestrate cinematic magic on over 25 titles, including She's Funny That Way, Father Stew, and Monstrous. You, my dear, are a force to be reckoned with. I love you. I had to say it first. Welcome, Colleen.
I love you. I love you. Why did you say it first? Because I want to tell you I love you. And you've actually been in my life because when I've been at the focus group screenings, which you're brilliant at, and most recently at a movie I had that just came out, which I love, and you were so enormously helpful at the Gates, which just opened, and I'm an executive producer on it, and I really want people to see the film. It's won 3 festivals, including the Savannah Festival, and it's also won a Latin American film festival in New York. But what's interesting and why I bring it up is because distribution, as you know now, which is so much of your field in how movies get placed, marketed, and distributed, is very challenging. And I don't know why I'm extrapolating on this, but I just produced also a film called Day of the Fight, which is Jack Huston's directorial debut, which is brilliant.
Really?
And it was in competition in Venice. And it stars Michael Pitt, who is from Boardwalk Empire. And because Jack and I worked on a film that I produced called Above Suspicion.
Oh, I remember that.
You remember?
Wonderful picture.
Thank you. With Emilia Clarke and Jack. And then I put Jack in a play that Barbara Broccoli and I produced called Strangers on a Train at the Gielgud in London. And so
They have remade that movie, Strangers on a Train, so many times because it's such a great story.
It's a great story.
Lifetime, multiple iterations.
I know, it's
of
a
that.
great
And I want to
story.
mention Barbara Broccoli. It happens to be one of your best friends.
Best friends.
And you just said you stayed over last night for your girls' night.
Well, we do. Because when she
Whenever
comes
she's in town.
She said, when I stay there, it's like having triplets. Talk about defining other roles. I love what you said because the other day I was talking to somebody and they were talking about Apocalypse Now. And of course, I did Apocalypse Now, Smile, and The Game of Death and Death Game all in the same 2 years. And I was thinking about such
the diversity
of those parts.
Let me ask you something, Colleen. So you are just a force. Barbara describes it as having triplets, but when you walk into a room, the room changes, it stops. You're like a gravitational pull that you have.
I love you.
And as a actress, I find you terribly concentrated and so immersed. How do you compartmentalize both parts of yourself?
I love that question. For some reason lately, I've been surrounded by many Geminis. I'm a Gemini. And Barbara's a Gemini. Angelica, her daughter, is a Gemini. And I don't know hugely about astrology, but I do know that Geminis have multiple personalities, dual personalities, meaning that they are able to compartmentalize in a sense. I can be very, very regimented and extremely concentrated on something. And when I'm creating a character, whether it's the French maid in Clue or whether it's a movie called The Game of Death opposite Bruce Lee, who was dead when I did the movie, or whether it's the last movie Betty Davis did called Wicked Stepmother, or American Hustle, where I play the wire girl. And it's interesting because in that movie, Alexander Payne, who I worked with on Election, and I played Reese Witherspoon's mother, and the mother's very controlling and, under the guise of being, of course, very supportive of Tracy Flick. You can really see how Tracy Flick is driven because the mother's driven.
Can you promise me you'll donate your brain to science? How you retain names, information, credits. It's really astounding. I so admire you for that. And you remember important facts.
Thank you.
There is an authenticity to you. People that don't know you would describe you as chaotic. And they would describe you or dismiss you even as a whirling dervish. And I have to tell you, there is so much depth to you. I get you in such a real and authentic way. I love being around you, and we vibe, you know?
I love being around you. And what I appreciate is the way you feel about me, or Barbara or David or Russell would say, someone who doesn't get Colleen, I don't trust.
Ooh.
And it's an interesting statement because...
It is an interesting statement.
And Jerry Bruckheimer said, yeah, Crazy Colleen, it's the best cloaking device. And that's a very interesting way of
It's almost like sending you in for reconnaissance.
Yeah, that's right.
And then going, okay, here's the real skinny on that.
Do you know what's very funny about what you just said?
That's so funny, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fred Roos, at this screening of At the Gates the other night at the Grove, said, you just got the biggest compliment I've ever heard. This CIA operative that I brought. I said, you brought a CIA operative? He said, yes. And he pointed out that you'd be a great spy. And it was only because I asked somebody a question, but it was like an obvious question. I asked them how it was working with somebody, and he worked with them. So it wasn't like I was asking some clandestine question. But the way the person responded was, why are you asking me that question? It would be like saying, Colleen, do you have a daughter? Why are you asking me that question? But you could learn a lot from people, and maybe that's because of acting, or I've always felt like that. Acting depends on behavior and idiosyncratic behavior.
Living truthfully under imaginary circumstances.
Sandy Meisner.
Sandy Meisner.
Love you. Love that you know Sandy Meisner.
I studied with Bill Esper.
Bill Esper,
and Captain
genius.
Gately, yeah. But a genius. Yeah. Genius.
But you are genius, and what's interesting is that
Meisner was your primary.
Yes, there's a woman named Joanne Barron.
Oh, Joanne.
I brought her to Los Angeles. She had worked with Bill Esper.
Oh, yes, she did.
In New York, and I brought her out here to do her first class ever, and she started the Joanne Barron School before she married GW. And Martha Coolidge and I were in that class.
Is that where I met you, at Martha's wedding?
Oh my God! I was at Martha's wedding, of course.
So was I, and so was Neil. And Joanne was there.
Yes, but I introduced Joanne to Martha, but didn't I know you before that?
No, you didn't. Martha I knew before because I knew her from Rambling Rose, and even before that. But you and I go back maybe to your ex-husband, John Goldwyn.
Yes. And
like you used to come to so many of the screenings that we've had years ago.
All of those. I was at all those.
And I did all your father-in-law's screenings. In fact, my husband worked for Sam.
I know he did. And what's crazy, I was with Howard Cohen yesterday. Howard used to work for Sam, too.
Howard and Eric?
Yes. And I was going to see...
Howard Cohen and Eric Darbeloff, by the way.
Amazing. And Howard, of course, they
Roadside Attractions.
The best. And I had worked with them on Manchester by the Sea, but that was in a whole other capacity. Not as a producer, as an actress, but somebody who was helping them with a campaign on that.
Yes.
And we are so connected because the genius of you, and I really do mean that, when I say about distribution, and I bring it back to Kevin Goetz, because this year, I understand 400 movies were in Toronto and 3 were sold. And I believe that movies are communal. And I believe that movies still should exist in theaters. And I believe it's proven that they can. And what was interesting to me about a little movie called At the Gates, which cost under $1 million, it's timely. It's a wonderful story. It's about a woman that is working in an affluent house in Hancock Park, and basically she is threatened with deportation, and the couple hides her. And she has her son with her, and the son starts to suspect, why are we being hidden in this house? And they'd come from El Salvador. And I love a movie like that, or I love a movie like Day of the Fight. And these movies are more challenging to get distributed.
Or Irina's Vow I just saw.
How is that?
Wonderful. And it's, again, about a Polish woman who hid 11 Jews during Nazi Germany at the major's house, the Nazi major's house, under his floorboards.
How is that possible?
I know, it's unbelievable. And it's quite a wonderful story. Gosh.
Where do I see it, and has it?
We'll get into it afterwards, I'll tell you. I know Jeff Sackman produced it, and he just sent it to me, and I'm hoping that it really takes hold. I want to ask you of all the directors you've worked with, and I want to name a few of them here: Francis Ford Coppola, Herbert Ross, Peter Bogdanovich, Martha Coolidge, Philip Noyce, John McTiernan, Ang Lee, Alexander Payne, Rob Reiner, David O. Russell. I mean, does it get any better? Who have we missed? Well, there's a few, but really.
Nicholas Roeg.
I know, it's crazy.
The Weitz brothers, Paul Weitz, J. Lee Thompson.
Is there a particular director that really got you?
Well,
and as a result of that, you really delivered a performance that you're quite proud of?
You know, it's interesting because I'm thinking about Jonathan Lynn, and I'm thinking about Peter Bogdanovich and Alexander and David O. Russell and Herbert, but all in very different ways, and I'll clarify. Peter Bogdanovich wrote the part for me, and they all laughed. And he wrote it because he thought I had a specific cadence and a rhythm and a humor that was almost like a 30s actress, whether it was Rosalind Russell or
like the
Howard Hawks kind of,
banter, His
Hawks,
Girl Friday kind of thing.
His Girl Friday. And in fact, what's interesting is that later, Jonathan Lynn, when I was cast in Clue, which is the antithesis of the part in They All Laugh, but Jonathan asked everyone to watch, and we watched His Girl Friday as a research before he went into Clue. Now, why would His Girl Friday? Because Jonathan Lynn, as a brilliant theater director in London, the National Theater, and he wanted a rhythm, and he wanted the people in Clue, the actors, to overlap. It's brilliant, Clue. I've seen it recently, and it really holds up.
Does it hold up?
It not only holds up, it's a classic. And then I did another movie with Jonathan Lynn called Greedy, with Michael J. Fox and Kirk Douglas and Phil Hartman and Ed Begley and Jerry Worms, and Kristen Dunst played my daughter. And if you look at those movies, Jonathan Lynn, very specific rhythm. Peter had me playing a very different type of character because They All Laughed. It's, hey, dogs, honey, I can lock them up. You know, it's like, whereas in Clue, but it is dark upstairs and I'm frightened of the dark. Will anyone go with me? I will. No, thank you. So it's, Michael McKean was so funny in that, Chris Lloyd. So I'm thinking about rhythm and I'm thinking about character. And
the great directors understand rhythm.
They understand rhythm. Herbert Ross understood rhythm. When I went and auditioned for Funny Lady, and I was also in My Blue Heaven, he and Nora Kay interviewed me. And I had just played the human slave in Battle for the Planet of the Apes, opposite Roddy McDowell and Kim Hunter.
Oh, God, how
and
great.
It was hysterical, and it was really funny. And I went in to meet with Herbert. I was 19, and Nora was a force of nature. And I went into the audition, and the lines were, I'm in bed with James Caan, and I see Fanny Bryce, and I go, oh, my God, you're Fanny Bryce. And Nora said, do it with a Southern accent. And I said, okay. Oh, my God, you're Fanny Bryce. Every time I see you, I laugh so hard I can't. She laughs so hard you fall out of bed because so it was a very funny scene, and it was all about rhythm. It was all about an accent, and I had done an earlier film right after that.
Of course, you could have played it. Well,
that's true.
Are you Fanny Bryce?
That's correct.
I am just.
You're right.
So taken with you.
By the way, what I love about what you just did, because it's true. And I did another film where I called Sissy Spacek because it was the Nick Rogue film, and I played a character with Gary Oldman and Teresa. Right after Russell, after Gary had done Prick Up Your Ears, he said, your name's Arlanda. He said, like, that sounds like the name of an airport. And I go, I don't like that. The name of an airport. What do you mean the name of an airport? So that
and how much funnier is that than that quicker rhythm?
Yes.
Because it's like.
Yes, it's so, you're right. It's very different. And I was in a movie with David Carradine and Jennifer O'Neill called Cloud Dancer. And I actually was in an airplane that flew upside down. And I was doing a Texas accent. It was very funny. I don't like flying in this kind of airplane, and so that was a different kind of an accent. Accents define class, they define character, depending on how you do that accent. When you think about Vivian Lee in Gone with the Wind, it was an accent that was, oh, I just don't like going in a pod, or whatever. Her accent
had that pouty,
it was a different
sort
kind
of,
of an accent.
but when what's so interesting, that fragility that she had.
Oh,
but
yes.
But then when she asserts herself towards the second half of the film, you're like, she uses that and she grounds her voice.
She uses, yes.
Her voice gets grounded.
It does.
She uses that, and it's suddenly like there's a woman that comes out.
I don't care about that. It's like, you're right. It's like when Rhett turns to her and says, wait, those aren't the hands of a woman. And she's, I don't care, just give me the money. It's like all of a sudden,
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just give me the money.
On a dime.
But I mean, it's brilliant.
Are there any particular lessons? Give me one, actually, that some director taught you that has stayed with you for your career. Because you work with so many geniuses.
Well, I'll tell you two directors. To go back to say favorite directors, Peter Bogdanovich was one of my best friends and a genius, and I produced with him, and I wrote a script with him, and I was in, of course, They All Laughed with him, and The Department. She's funny that way, and I think he's an absolute genius.
Well, Ben Mankiewicz was a guest of mine just recently, and he did that incredible multi-part podcast on Peter Bogdanovich. You've got to hear it if you haven't. It's really staggering.
Well, I want to, because I would say Peter taught me a lot, and he understood rhythm. And I remember in one of my scenes in They All Laughed, which was a scene with John Ritter, where I touched his body because he said he wasn't feeling very well. And I said, why don't I give you a massage? Why don't I give you a touch assist? And I give him this very funny touch assist. It's my way of seducing him. But Peter said, we had 7 minutes, and it was a 4-page scene without a cut. He said, let's just try to get it before lunch. And Peter was...
Wait, did you do it?
I did it. And I found from Peter, my first take was always the best, my first or second take. Now, that isn't always the case, because the way he works...
Why? Did he rehearse first?
I wish there were a rehearsal. There was no rehearsal. I mean...
So then why with him was your first
There was kind of an energy, kind of an excitement. It was kind of you were just revved up. Whereas in other things, like I remember doing a movie called Smile, and Conrad Hall was the DP and Michael Ritchie was the director, and it was an incredible film. And he wanted the characters extremely natural, as though they were not actors, because many of the actors in that movie were acting opposite locals in Santa Rosa. It was this American
wanted to match
Miss.
The energy in a way.
It was an American Miss pageant. Mm-hmm. It was Bruce Dern and Barbara Feldon, and I packed a suitcase as a talent. And I remember when I auditioned for the part, I had a different kind of rhythm, like, hi, everybody, I'm packing a suitcase. And I got the part that way. But when we were filming it, it almost was though Michael Ritchie did a docu-style, because he didn't want it slick. So I remember one of the lessons I learned, he said, you got to do it my way, because he wanted it very natural. So I would say, hi, everybody, I'm Connie Thompson, and I packed my suitcase and I put my naughtiest nightie right on top. So it was like scared, and there was a different cadence. But to go back to what you said about lessons, I learned something on a Happy Days episode where I never did more than the one episode.
With Gary?
Yep.
Gary Marshall?
Oh, yeah. And what was really, really interesting is this particular episode, it was directed by Jerry Paris.
Okay.
And who I later recommended to direct Police Academy 2, which I starred in, and Police Academy 4. But
was that what Sharon was in?
Yes, Sharon was in 4. And I learned a big lesson. I made a mistake and I learned from it. But I stopped myself after doing a scene with the Fonz, and I was Rose, and they were filming, and I had a malt, and I brought it out to the car, and I spilled it by accident all over him. I go, oh, I'm really sorry. And they said, why did you do that? You should have kept going. It was a happy accident.
Absolutely.
You spilled something.
That is a great lesson.
It was a great lesson. And I learned from that point. And it really, really helped me because when you work with David O. Russell likes happy accidents. David O. Russell is very improvisational. So other people...
He's sort of brilliant, isn't he?
Brilliant. And so you're working with David, and I remember I was doing a scene playing the wire girl, and I'm all excited, and I'm in a scene, and I'm getting to a wire. No one's made me important. And Amy Adams and Bradley Cooper come in, and they go, oh, with champagne, and we need you to send this wire. I go, oh, I'm the wire girl. Nobody ever asked me to do anything like that. And then David goes, you love cats. Off camera. I mean, it's like he'll throw you something. And all of a sudden, I'm like looking up. He goes, don't say the lines, but you love cats. So all of a sudden, I look up, and on my desk, David O. Russell has put 4 pictures of cats. I mean, just out of the blue. And I went, oh, there's Barnaby. He likes to play the piano. So it was kind of a spontaneous moment.
Gosh, is that great?
And so that's
I love those.
That's
stories,
a great lesson. But with Alexander Payne, he's very precise about words, and he's really smart about words. And Babalu and Lowell Gantz on Greedy were also, they loved the words, and
well,
of course
they're writers.
They're writers, and they offer improv, but David was much more improvisational. So I would say lessons to be learned is always be ready to improv if you have a scene that happens and something happens in the scene that's an accident, and you just go with it.
Absolutely. Becomes very human. Becomes very human.
Becomes authentic.
And when writers, I mean, like great writers, they wrestle with a period, with a comma, right? They don't just arbitrarily.
Correct.
So it's important to respect that, I think. And, I'm curious, because you are like this ball of energy, do you have a particular fun moment on set where you were like, this is a ball, I don't want it to end, please, God, let's bottle this up?
Oh, so many times, like on Clue. I think on Clue because the actors were so brilliant. Madeline Kahn, Eileen Brennan.
Dude,
Brennan,
how
Jim,
much better do you get than
no, you
Madeline
don't get
Kahn
better.
and Eileen Brennan?
And Leslie Ann Warren and Tim Curry.
And Leslie Ann Warren.
And Chris Lloyd and Michael McKean and Martin Mull. And when you're working with genius, in the same way that Phil Hartman and Michael J. Fox on Greedy, and we didn't know he was ill, or even on They All Laugh to work with Audrey Hepburn and Ben Gazzara and John Ritter and Patty Hansen and Dorothy Stratton.
They make you better.
They make you better. And those are actors that are generous, and they make you better. And even Rob Reiner, when I worked with him briefly, these are brilliant, brilliant directors. And when you are working opposite brilliant actors, they really, really make you better.
Wow.
By getting to know these directors is how I merged into producing. And I think that on Death Game, the movie that I did in 1975 with Sandra Locke and Seymour Cassell, it was Eli Roth who saw that movie and flipped over it and said, oh my God, this is incredible. You're brilliant. I said, what are you talking about? He said, Death Game. I said, Death Game? That was done in 1975. And Jack Fisk was the production designer, and Sissy Spacek and Bill Paxton did the props. And he said, I want to remake it. And then we did, Knock Knock. I wish to God you'd been in those previews. I put Ana de Armas in it. And it was Keanu Reeves, and Eli directed it. And
Eli is so wonderful.
Eli's movie came out Thanksgiving.
Oh, successful.
Very.
I know. So he's
unbelievable.
He's terrific, and I loved working with him on it. And so funny, when we had lunch.
He loved working with you.
He's a really terrific guy. And I remember when we had lunch a few weeks ago, it was like Eli, Lee Daniels.
I know. Lee, I just worked with Lee.
I know. And you were so good in that movie. You really are terrific in it. And I just want to say that we know everybody. It's like between the two of us, it's almost nutty.
I could spend like a week with you, and then you wrote the brilliant book, and you're a brilliant writer, and you also gave me amazing advice once. I mean, more than once, but because I've acted in 200 films and because I've produced movies, I am so passionate like you. And I entered an arena where if I love a movie, if I love The Pianist, or I love Brokeback Mountain, or I love Slumdog Millionaire, or I love Parasite, when I love a movie, I really want that movie to have the opportunity. And so when I look at movies that aren't getting the full distribution they should, it's not purposeful sometimes. It's because of so many things that have happened with streaming, with COVID.
When we come back, I want to really get into that. And that's kind of your sort of next iteration of your career. We'll be back in a moment.
Get a glimpse into a secret part of Hollywood that few are aware of and that filmmakers rarely talk about. In the new book, Audienceology by Kevin Goetz. Each chapter is filled with never-before-revealed inside stories and interviews from famous studio chiefs, directors, producers, and movie stars, bringing the art and science of audienceology into focus. Audienceology, how moviegoers shape the films we love. From Tiller Press at Simon & Schuster. Available now.
We're back with the great Colleen Camp, the funny and hysterical Colleen Camp, the marvelous advocate for emerging filmmakers, young filmmakers, and legends alike. She's just extraordinary. And Colleen, during this little commercial break, asked me to give her a back massage. And she just started with, tell us what you just said.
No, it's so funny because David O. Russell said what he wants to do is film me all over the world, asking anybody for a massage. Now, that could get you in trouble because it's literally
100%.
It can get you in trouble.
You can't do that anymore.
No, you can't do it. But the funny thing is, it has nothing to do with any sexuality. My back hurts. So I need a full-time trainer to be walking around with me. And it's ridiculous.
I've got a great one to
be.
I'm going to send you a person.
It could be because I have a little gravity going on above, but my back hurts.
And talking about gravity and your particular gravity, you were a Playboy centerfold.
Well, yes and no. I was never a centerfold. I was an earthsat. I was an earthsat centerfold because it means that I was, well, if you see Apocalypse Now, I play a Playboy bunny.
I know
And so then, in order to do that, they had to replace a photograph on a boat, which is the boat that they were traveling along the river in. And they had to have a shot of me in a black wig with my top off to match the original centerfold on the boat, which was of Linda Carter. And Linda Carter had a Wonder Woman series. And my
father has an obsession with Linda Carter.
Well, she's incredible. I've only done nudity in 3 movies, and they were all in the same year. Apocalypse Now, Smile, and, which is bizarre, and Death Game. Death Game was as I told you, it was the movie I did with Seymour Cassell and Sandra Locke. The other movie, of course, Smile, was, you didn't see me front on, it was Melanie Griffith, me, Michael Ritchie.
And there were no intimacy coordinators then.
Oh, no. And it was very tiny nudity, and then Apocalypse Now.
Did it make you uncomfortable? Or?
Well, it did. And on Apocalypse Now, when I first met on it, and they said, would you do nudity? I said, no. And then Linda Carter was cast. It's a true story. And then Linda Carter couldn't do it. And Linda Carter had a big contract with Wonder Woman. And
she already had done some of it. That's what you said you had a master.
She had already done this ersatz phony centerfold because she was never a playmate. And so in order for legal reasons, they had to replace a prop on the boat. And so I had to do this ersatz centerfold because it was a centerfold on a boat. And so I was never actually a playmate. And the irony is, I'd been asked for years to be a Playboy centerfold. And
are you friends with Hugh Hefner, or were you friends with Hugh Hefner?
I had known a photographer named Mario Caselli. And Mario Caselli shot a lot of the Playboy centerfolds. And through Cunningham and Associates and a woman named Polly Peluso, believe it or not, I did a lot of modeling during that period. When I say modeling, Touch of Sweet and hand lotion,
fashion.
Max Factor, Maybelline, and it was great because I'll never forget it because I was a bird trainer at Busch Gardens. And I made $2.
Macaws, right?
Macaw parrots and cockatoos, and I made $2.67 an hour. And then before that, I worked at Nobby Knits, and I made $1.65 an hour.
That was like a knitting store?
It was a clothing store, and it was called Nobby's, and it was in Panorama City. And so when I got a modeling job where I could make $50 an hour, and I mean, crazy stuff like Resorter Magazine, fork trucks, like lifting fork trucks. I mean, I'm saying it wrong.
You were in college then?
I only went to 1 year of junior college, which was Valley Junior College. I started working professionally when I was about 19. And the first show I ever got was Love American Style, and it was my first
Love
agent.
American Style.
That's right. It was with Karen Valentine, and it was my agent was Mary Grady, and so I was able, because I was singing in this group called Peter Lance, and Peter Lance had this group of girls, and Mary Grady came to see me there, and she said, "Can I see you any place else? You're a great singer." I said, "Oh yes, you can come to my bird show." So I performed bird acts at Busch Gardens. So
And Busch Gardens was in the Valley, huh?
that's right, in Northridge. So I had a great show there. It was very, very, very funny. But I know you asked me an important question a minute ago.
No, I asked you about becoming a Playboy centerfold.
Oh, right, of course, the massage, the centerfold, and all of that.
No, I want to segue, though, to something that's important.
Okay.
Because you and I can kibitz like
All
all
day.
afternoon. Exactly. So you have a business that for the last, I don't know, decade or so, or if not a little bit more than that, has really been an advocate for so many movies. You love filmmakers.
I love
You love
filmmakers.
movies.
And that's why when you said, who's the best director you've worked with? Here's what's interesting about that statement. I feel all of these directors, and I really, really, really mean it. I feel I've learned so much. You know, Nick Rogue said he cast me in Track 29 because he saw me in a movie called The Joy of Sex. And Martha Coolidge, who I love, and she's brilliant. I watched Valley Girl recently, and I was in Valley Girl, and I was in Anne and Joy, and I was in Joy of Sex. And Nick Rowe cast me because he said, "You're a character actress." And he said, "I saw you in Joy of Sex, and I thought you were incredible." And when I think of Martha
And you
Coolidge,
say that because you were quite a looker, and so you were more than an ingenue.
Correct.
Is that what you mean to say, right?
Yes.
You were a character
Yes.
actress. You could play,
Yes.
and that goes back to my introduction as a chameleon.
and so that's
And any actor wants to be a character
that's true.
actor.
And
let's face it.
so though I had a kind of a look that was a femme fatale type look, I really always loved playing characters. And I was 26 when I did Valley Girl, and Sheila Benson wrote an article in I believe it was the Herald Examiner, where she said, Colleen Camp looks younger than the Valley Girl daughter. And we were pretty much the same age, about 3 years apart. But the thing is, not that I looked younger, but she was making a statement. And I loved character parts. I loved doing The Seduction with David Schmoller and Morgan Fairchild and Andrew Stevens. I loved doing parts where I would play a lot of different characters. And even in Sliver with Sharon, I played a character named Judy Marks. I have red hair. I'm her right hand. And I love playing character parts. But I think that because I've always thought a big picture, when I'm in a movie, I don't think of just my part. I think, and this is a producerial skill and probably why I'm passionate about supporting movies, because I always look that the director has the hardest job on that set because he has to keep it, and the producer, but the director has to keep everything going, and he has to have all of the storylines in his head. And
make every decision.
And
thrown
deal with
upon her or him, and
deal with different personalities.
Exactly.
And personalities and actors work in different ways. And so it's hard because my dream is working with David O. Russell, who's spontaneous and wonderful, and Alexander Payne, incredible, Peter Bogdanovich, incredible, Jonathan Lynn, incredible, Martha Coolidge, incredible, Penelope Spheris in Wayne's World. I mean, she's a genius.
Yeah.
I mean, I have been so lucky, and I think really lucky, Francis Ford Coppola, Apocalypse, to be in seminal films. And I think the one thing is you never know whether it's Wayne's World or Valley Girl or Police Academy 2, Jerry Paris, Game of Death, the last Bruce Lee movie, Bob Klaus. I brought John Barry into that film. That's how I met Barbara Broccoli. I mean, I helped John Barry score that movie because John Barry was going through a very difficult time and he needed to get a huge payday fast for a movie. And I called Andre Morgan and Raymond Chow, and he ended up scoring The Game of Death. He'd never scored a kung fu action film. He was doing the Bonds. And I was at a party, and that's where I met Barbara Broccoli with him after I had helped get him that
gig.
That job. So I think I've always been a person that loves to put people together.
Oh, yeah. Galvanizer. That is a superpower of yours.
And so I think I have such a love of directors. And Oliver Stone said to me recently, I want to really tap into your brain because your memory is so
It's true.
incredible. And it's almost like you're a research machine, because I think, though, as you said, people might think it's chaotic. I'm actually present. Though it may appear
Correct.
that I'm operating on multiple levels, like as Bob Thurman, a Tibetan scholar, would say, it's like a tornado.
Yeah.
In a
it's
good
like a
way.
tornado. In a good way.
But
Absolutely.
I'm actually absorbing the information because I'm passionate. And I found that filmmakers would have a movie, like, say, The Pianist, and there was all these other movies, whether it was Gangs of New York or about Schmidt or, all these other movies, a Michael Caine movie. And I thought that Adrian Brody was so brilliant in that film.
Oh.
And I thought the film was such a masterpiece. I really felt it was a little bit of an underdog film. And I got very passionate about it. And
that's what it is.
It's about passion.
It is. And then you'll get behind something, because you can't sell something if you're not passionate.
100%.
You just said to me today, we won't get into the specifics, but there was an award show which you were asked to fill with talent. And your line was, well, I don't do that. I can only do it organically. I can invite someone to a movie that I love.
That's right.
To show up.
That's
but
right.
I can't wrangle talent. That's someone else's job.
Well, it's true. And I think that what you just said is very smart, because unless there's a motivation.
And by the way, people want to work with you and do favors for you or show up for you.
Thank you.
They want to do that because there's something that they're going to gain, a good movie experience.
Exactly.
Help their charity.
That's
whatever it's
right. Thank you. And that's the point. What I said.
So you don't want that currency. That's expensive, and that's meaningful currency, and you don't want to give that away
or give that
taint
away.
that.
And what I said, which was very interesting, and I said, because I love the people that were asking me that, I said, but unless I know, and there were some illustrious people that were being awarded, but I said, I'm not a person that just delivers somebody.
No. But tell me about your business now. I want to
Well,
hear.
I'll tell you what that is. So it's
and how did it evolve? What's it called, by the way?
Well, it's not even a business. Here's what's.
You have 6 or 7 employees.
Yes. Here's what it is. I run 3 different operations, and that is producing movies. Like I just produced them.
Right.
I produced 5 movies this year, which is unusual. One was in competition in Deauville, which was a little movie called Wayward, which I love. One was in competition in Venice, Jack Huston's directorial debut. Right. One was called Here's Yanni, a little tiny piece with Julia Armand, Rosanna Arquette, and Joey Cortez. One is a movie I love with Don Johnson and Jack Huston that Andy Tennant directed. One was this little movie At the Gates. And one is a movie with Margot Robbie that I did and Tom Ackerley called Borderline. Now, what's interesting.
You produced that?
Yes.
With them?
I executive produced.
We worked on that. Yeah,
3 of those
it's terrific.
movies.
It's a beautiful movie.
And
right?
I want to talk to you about that in detail. But what's interesting is that I don't even know how to describe it. I'd see a movie like The Fighter, and I'd say, this is brilliant. And Relativity had never had any movies that had awards. And I believed it was award-driven. And because I have a shorthand with directors, because I'm an actress, and a shorthand with producers, because I've acted in so many films. And produced.
Yourself.
And I know the lay of the land, that I would say, no, this has to be done like this. And we need this person to do this Q&A. And no, David, I believe that this is the better strategy. And so I kind of by accident, almost it's a producerial skill mixed in with
your connections, with your passion for movies, with your
and putting people together,
belief in whatever it is,
Exactly. So I think what happened is for many, many years, I was doing this out of love and commitment, and then what happened is
you started to be good at it.
Well, and what would be crazy,
and you'd start to see results.
Well, and you'd see, okay, Black Swan, it's really hard. What are we going to do? But no, I know what we do. We do this. Or Parasite's a perfect example. I saw the movie June 1st, 2019 with Mickey Lee, and nobody had seen this film in California yet. But it had just won Cannes. And I was blown away. Wendy Goldberg wanted me to meet with Mickey Lee.
Mickey is just
a force of nature and brilliant.
A force of nature. She just invited me over to her house for one of her dinner salons.
Oh, she's amazing.
And she's an extraordinary woman. She gave me homework to watch 5 or 6 movies.
Oh, she's a genius.
And last night I just wrote her. I said, I finally finished the last movie. And
she should be on your
they're
podcast because there's no one like
incredible.
Mickey Lee. She is a visionary. And Bong Joon-ho told me actually something very interesting. He said that Mickey Lee, in a cultural environment where women haven't always been the first in line, and that's everywhere, and I would say in the world, and I'm not saying that to belabor it, but I'm saying the strides she's made in Korea, where
It's unbelievable.
she's had.
It's a multimedia empire.
Oh, a multimedia empire. And by the way, she's a genius and is revered and knows movies and is a cinephile and went to Harvard and.
Did she go to Harvard?
Oh, 100%. And
I just saw this. She showed us after dinner. She showed us a video of all of the different verticals that are within, I guess, CJ Entertainment.
Oh, she's a genius.
But the overall company, there's food element. It's crazy.
Well, there's no one like her. And when I saw Parasite, I wept uncontrollably, and I said, "This is the perfect tale of karma." And
you really were instrumental. I just want to say for our listeners in the success of that movie. What did you do? What did you do specifically that you think helped drive interest and that award kind of imprimatur?
Well, I think because I had worked on some international films, and I think that because I believed in a lot of international films, whether it was Cold War or Roma or movies that I worked on passionately, the thing that struck me about this film was I knew it needed a certain caliber of Q&A. If you're doing a Q&A, if you're trying to figure out who Bong Joon-ho is, who could do that Q&A? Bob Balaban, David O. Russell, Guillermo del Toro. Who are those auteur directors that are on a very different playing field but are interesting? And they're interesting. Bob Balaban.
By getting that kind of gravitas behind that movie, I think is even in the moderator who's
correct. Because if you have David O. Russell, like we did something with Spike Lee, and it was like a happening. Because his enthusiasm and his genius about film. And so you're watching a happening. You're watching David O. Russell at the Writers Guild do an interview with Bong Joon-ho, and Bong Joon-ho said this was like the most exciting thing, because when you're going through a campaign or you're going through trying to get people to see your movie, it can be exhausting. It's a lot of work. But if you're energized by it and you're dealing with people that give you energy is everything. I said this to my daughter, who's amazing. I said, Emily.
Hold on, Emily. Let's talk about Emily. Stanford graduate.
Love her.
I remember her into horses, right? Because when she was a kid, she
loved horses. She loves exercise.
That's Martha, because Martha's a horse.
Martha, she had her own horses, but she's only been on horses a few times. She wasn't like a big horseback rider. She was into basketball and swimming and musicals, and she starred in Bat Boy
and now
and
she's
Marlboro.
A showrunner.
Well, she is an executive producer, writer, and she did Emily in Paris. She was in Smilf. She did Amy Schumer's show. She just wrote a script for Karen Roosevelt and Elizabeth Gabler, which is a wonderful wedding story, which is fantastic. She was in the Sunday Company of the Groundlings. And she did
as a performer?
Oh, she's brilliant. I'm saying to Emily, why are you not writing your own show? She is truly one of the funniest, brilliant.
Well, look at the background that she has with her mother is Colleen Camp. Her father is John Goldwyn. I mean, it's pretty impressive. John's a super, super impressive guy.
He is.
And you are another force of nature. So there's no surprise that Emily is as accomplished as she is and as gifted as she is. What do you think is going to be the movies to look out for? Not yours, because we've already talked about yours. What are some others that you're excited about?
The funny thing is, when you talk about mine, which is interesting, I feel a little guilty because of the strike and because I was gone for 2 months in Savannah producing a movie with Rebel Wilson called Bride Hard, which is a combination of Bridesmaids and Die Hard. I came back and my little movie opened and Bob Burney's opening it. And of course, these distribution companies need funding to make sure these movies can come out. I have to literally sit down and watch the movies. I have not seen.
Do you see the Holdovers?
I love Holdovers. I think it is brilliant.
Me too.
I think the movie is incredible. I put Divine in Brideheart, a comedy based on her performance in Holdovers. It's the antithesis in Holdovers, but Alexander Payne is a genius. It's such a simple movie. It's such a simple story, but it's emotional.
When I saw that movie, I told Alexander, I said, your genius is that within the first 5 minutes,
Yep.
you craft a world,
Yep.
like a universe
He does.
that we are immersed in through the camera work, through the angles, through
Yes.
just the panning shots and the rhythm. You want to talk about rhythm?
Rhythm.
He understands
Oh, he's a
understood that
genius.
rhythm of the movie from the get-go. And I said, I so appreciated that. And I think he really was very
He loves,
grateful for that comment.
I think, loves your input. And I think that
I've worked on almost all of his movies. I think maybe all of them.
well, I love working with him in Election.
He's such a talented man and a really good guy, too.
A good person and incredibly smart. He speaks like 7 languages. I mean, Alexander is so thoughtful. And, you know, Alexander, to his credit, when we were looking, he called me up 9 months ahead of Emily's college tours. And he said, hi, it's Alexander. I said, I want to take you on a college tour. I said, what? He said, we're going to go to Stanford and Berkeley, because he went to Stanford undergrad. And I'd gone back east with John, my ex-husband, who I was married to for 19 years, to the East Coast. But Alexander and Emily and I went to Stanford and Berkeley. And it was so funny. I said, well, I'm all excited. You went to Stanford. Oh, who do I call at the school? He said, call the touring office and just ask them when the tour times are. I mean, he didn't pull rank. There's no pretense to Alexander. And I think, and we went, and Emily chose Stanford, I think, based on the experience, to be honest, that we had going with Alexander on that tour. I think it's an incredible movie. And did you see A.V. Rockwell's movie?
No.
Which is wonderful.
No.
It's 1001.
No, there's so many very good
And have
ones.
you seen, I mean, what other movies were you working on that you were doing previews on?
So
I
many.
mean, how do you do that? Because
I can't talk about
you can't.
individual movies, but I can tell you movies are alive and well, is all I can say. And we are very excited to have some very good things that are opening. And that's a great thing for our
because that's
business.
box office. And Holdovers is doing
not just box office. I'm talking about just beautiful content.
Yes.
Beautiful
yes,
pictures,
yes.
beautiful movies. And as you know, the American Cinematheque is near and dear to my heart.
I know it is. And you had to postpone it, right? Because of the strike.
Yeah.
Because Helen Mirren, who was a genius and was being honored.
Yeah.
But that had
Along
to push.
With yours truly.
I know.
Along with yours truly.
Well, you deserve that honor in spades.
Thank you.
And,
thank you so much.
And that was probably very disappointing for you to have to postpone it.
Well, the good news on the postponement is that I got to raise a little bit more money. And so we will be over $1 million towards a really good cause that is near and dear to both of our hearts, Colleen, which is going to a movie and seeing it on a big screen.
100%.
And enjoying that experience.
And that's why we have to, when I say box office, it's because I want to prove, and Barbara Broccoli and I were talking about this, and David and I were talking about this, if a movie has some box office, this is how it's gauged, then more movies will be distributed.
Gotcha. More movies beget more movies.
More movies.
And more good movies beget even better movies. Like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Creativity is at an all-time high. I refuse to say that things are, they're not the way they were, but I refuse to say that they're worse than they were, that quality is going down. It's just not true. It's just not true.
I agree with you. And I think that...
And you and I are supporters of those young, emerging filmmakers.
Oh, young?
We still need to be.
Well, that's right. And to go back to that on this award show, it was very interesting because what I said was, have you seen a movie called The Accidental Getaway Driver? I said, because my dear friends, best friend in the world, Barbara Broccoli and Kimberly Stewart, who are always about quality, diversity, different kinds of films, and they use their power. I said, Barbara had wanted to make Chill for 18 years, and because she's such a brilliant producer, and I think because she's done so many diverse things, I'll see her names on movies where she's executive produced. I said, you did the Muhammad Ali documentary? Oh no, I helped. But what I was really thoughtful is that when the director won Sundance, I said, why has this movie not had domestic release yet? It has foreign with Sony, and it's a true story. It's about a driver that picked up 3 fares late at night, and they held him hostage. They were escaped convicts.
Ooh.
And it's a true story, and it's a beautiful film. And what I said, interestingly enough, to the people that were doing this show, I said, this is an important movie. And this is an important movie because this director won Sundance. It says something. And I believe what you just said about American Cinematheque is that if you can raise money, raise it for the quality of what you love and the passion of what you love.
Because there's so many good causes. So
there's so many good causes.
Fault anyone, but do what's near and dear to your own
near
heart.
and dear to your heart. And so what I said to this, and I feel very grateful to them because I said, why do you honor some movies that haven't necessarily been splashed all over the place, but are those little engines that could? When you think about what Gary Getzman and Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson did, Nina Vardolis on My Big Fat Greek Wedding, I've never seen anything like it. That movie opened soft, and they went on this tour like a whistle stop.
Nia's amazing. She's going to also come on this show. I just talked to her the other day, and she's going to be a guest here.
Isn't that wonderful?
I so appreciate that. Colleen, we can talk forever. I have to just say, you are a treasure in my life.
You're a treasure in my life. I love you so much.
You are a gift to the industry. I think truly a whirlwind of passion, of energy, of talent, of making people feel good about who they are. And that's a gift, my love. And I love you.
You're making me cry. You really are, because you care. And, I have to say something, Kevin. I love you so much, and you're making me cry because it brings to mind something I read in Walter Isaacson's book about Steve Jobs. And someone named Lee Clow was coming in to pitch something to him. It was for the Mac account. And Lee Clow said, I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to get it because I'm not with BBD, And Steve Jobs said, no, I want you to come in. I think you're going to come up with a good campaign. And it was, of course, Think Different. And what was interesting is what grabbed Steve Jobs, who was crying spontaneously, buckets of tears, Walter Isaacson said, is when, and it's so interesting, he pitched it with passion, purity, and excellence. And that's a very rare combination to have those 3 things.
Well, you have them, my dear, in spades.
You do.
And, well, thank you so much. To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed our interview. I encourage you to check out some of the films that we discussed here today. For other stories like this one, please check out my book, Audienceology, at Amazon, or through my website at kevingetz360.com. You can also follow me on my social media at kevingetz360. Until then, I'm Kevin Goetz, and to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.